Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Molly Madonia, and I'm the founder and president of First Generation Professionals of Milwaukee, serving the needs of Milwaukee's first generation professionals and students through mentorship, meaningful resources, and direct services. With me today is Corry Joe Biddle of the MMAC and FUEL Milwaukee. Corry Joe Biddle expertly navigates the balance between supporting the Milwaukee business community and its next generation talent pipeline. Through her work as Vice President of Talent and Community Affairs for the Milwaukee Metro Association of Commerce, she uplifts incoming talent in the workplace. Corry Joe brings Milwaukee's young leaders together to showcase all Milwaukee has to offer, both as a community and as an enriching place to start one's career. The intersection of all of these missions is where Corry Joe finds her calling and expertise. To name just a few of her accolades, Corry Joe has recently graduated from the Young American Leaders Program at Harvard University, received a Unity Award from Milwaukee Magazine in 2022, and was named as a Milwaukee Business Journal Young Professional Pandemic Power Broker in 2020. We are thrilled to have her perspective and advice for this community leader interview. Corry Joe Biddle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Molly. I'm excited to do this.
We are so excited to have you. Cannot wait to get into these questions and hear your perspective. We've got some really cool stuff to talk about this afternoon. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. First and foremost, you are joining us today as the Vice President, Talent and Community Affairs for MMAC, a well-known and reputable Milwaukee business association with a reach of over 10,000 professional subscribers. Please tell us a little bit about the MMAC, the constituents you work with, and the services the organization provides.
So MMAC is a business association. You could call it a chamber of commerce. And the MMAC exists to enhance and improve Milwaukee as a place, as a really attractive place for folks to grow and expand their businesses and for really talented people to come and live and grow their careers. So there's a lot of different divisions and departments here and people that work on different needs of entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized businesses, manufacturing businesses, all the things. And in my world, I really focus on the talent side. So my counterparts at M7 work really hard to attract businesses, the Microsoft deals and Haribos, and helping them to see how attractive Milwaukee is for them to expand and open new offices. And I do the exact same thing, but for talent. So companies do a really great job of recruiting talent to Milwaukee, and they take care of them from 9 to 5. And our job is to make sure that they're good once they're off work and really starting to make those connections that matter and make a place feel like home and not just the city where they got their first job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like, especially if you're going to travel from out of town to a new city or state or region of the country at all, it is important to feel that support in the community and be like, okay, cool, solidified in my decision because of the resources that are available to me.
Yeah, they got to be able to plug in. And one of the things that I learned, because I'm a Milwaukee native, so I was, all I know is Milwaukee. I left for a short period of time to go to college and I came back here. And I still hang out with people I went to middle school and elementary school with. So I've had to learn through the process of meeting folks that come to the FUEL events. We are very friendly people. We're very warm people, but this is not the kind of transient city where people are like making new friends all the time. We have to be very deliberate in welcoming new Milwaukeeans into our community and give them a way to plug in and have a seat at the tables where they really want to be active.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can see that's very important. And you guys do a great job of that, I will say. So specifically to dive into one of the initiatives that you are working on, you currently lead the Region of Choice initiative to increase representation of African American and Latino talent among 125 participating companies. In a 2021 Black is Beautiful interview with On Milwaukee, when describing the impact of this initiative, you said, with the focus more on systems everyone can be a part of dismantling and start to have real conversations about what inclusion and equity really looks like. We're working really hard to try to unlearn that mode of operation and do the challenging work of equity in companies, hiring, community building, and economic development in general. Can you share more about how this work began and the impact that you've seen?
Sure. So the Region of Choice work began in 2018. It officially, it was an initiative, so it officially ended at the end of 2024, but I'll tell you the story of how this came about and what the next steps probably will be. 2018, we got really strong feedback from executives, CEOs, top leadership at the employers that are our members. So MMAC has 2,000 companies who are part of our association. And we poll them every so often and say, what's great about Milwaukee? What's keeping you here? What makes it really attractive for you to be here? And what are some of the things that are challenging? What are the things that, I wish this was different? And in 2018, what came up as challenging is the segregation and racial disparity that we experience in Milwaukee because of the way that it affects talent and the company's ability to retain talent, to attract talent, and make sure that all their employees have a similar quality of life and the opportunity to engage in Milwaukee in the same way. So that was starting to bubble up in different ways inside of different companies. There were some companies that would talk about people's experience when they moved here from a different city. They would move to a certain suburb or a certain neighborhood and have an experience that wasn't what they would have wanted it to be. People that live so far on the north side that they're getting to work an hour and a half early in the middle of winter because the bus only runs so far and so many times per day. So they're, rather than be 5 minutes late, they're sitting outside for an hour and a half in the snow. There were lots of different stories like that were bubbling up from top leadership of the employers. And we thought, well, what is it that we can do to really look at racial disparity in Milwaukee and determine, is this something that happens in every metro or is there an extreme experience of it in Milwaukee? So we sort of polled Milwaukee against 20 peer metro cities and discovered that we really did have extreme disparities. And it was, quite different experience for white Milwaukeeans who were out of 20 ranked number 6 at the top. And for Black and brown Milwaukeeans, we were at the bottom compared to other cities with similar industry mixes, similar populations, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where Region of Choice came from. We looked at the issue and said, a lot of this is social. A lot of these things, we don't have a lever to pull. But as the business community, what lever can we pull? And that's the way we engage with folks inside of our companies and really analyze, are we giving everyone the same shot at economic prosperity, at success, at advancement? This is where Region of Choice came from. We ended up launching the initiative around 2 goals. So there was a goal to look at, analyze, and improve the number of Black and brown folks that were advanced or hired into management positions. And on the flip side, there was a look to an attempt to do the exact same thing for the employees at large for Black and brown communities. We chose those numbers because that's where the disparities were the widest. Certainly, we have to be inclusive in thinking about everyone, but we sort of zoomed in on those 2. That's where the biggest need was. So we launched the program. We had 130 companies that signed on. Those 130 companies signed on represented 125 employees in the Milwaukee region. And the work was, let's look at the data. Who are you employing? Who's at the management level? And let's break it out by race. And the commitment that the employers did was to look at their numbers every year at the same time of year and go back in and analyze their processes. If there were disparities, the question for the employer was why? Why is there such a gap And why aren't people being promoted the same way? So there were no assumptions made as a collective. Our job was just to say, as a collective of companies, we're going to take a really intense look at this and start to unpack why things are happening. That's where the magic came in, because a lot of the employers interviewed their employees. They looked at their systems. They looked at their processes. They looked at some of the cultural things that were going on inside the company and said, well, some of these things aren't intentional, but because of the way the structure is built, or because of the way that we advance people, or the processes that are in place, is maybe not giving everybody a fair shot. So let's switch it up. And we actually had some intention, and we had some numbers that we wanted to hit, and we absolutely hit them as a community. And what we did worked, and what we learned is that intentionality really works. So mind you, this is in 2018. This is a very different time and a different political climate, and regional choice truly did end at the end of 2024. And now we're looking at this new wave of thinking about this work. And our job now is to make sure that the intention of the employers is made clear, and that we are using language and processes and programs and tactics and initiatives that won't be easily misunderstood by people, and that it's clear that the efforts are to drive greater inclusion and belonging for everyone. I think a side effect, unintended side effect sometimes when we use a scalpel to zoom in when we see problems, is folks that don't understand or don't feel a part of the process fairly say, I don't understand this. I don't see myself in this work. I'm not sure how it benefits me. And it's a fair question. Even though the work is well intended, I think we can always get better about the way that we state things, about the way that we execute things. So this is the new wave of the work. As every employer is looking at inclusion and belonging in a completely different way, we are too. And the spirit of the work, I think, remains the same, but the way we're approaching it, I think is going to be better for everybody.
No, absolutely. That sounds like a huge effort, not only on behalf of the MMAC, but the partner organizations. Like, what incredible buy-in to undertake that level of data collection and investment and time, quite honestly, time as a resource in those findings. Like, sounds very collaborative.
Yes.
And certainly very fruitful.
It was amazing. So the data, the onus was on the companies, obviously, to sort of improve their own data. We looked at the data collectively and reported it, in aggregate, not pointing out any one company, and saw this collective support. But the power for the collective was in getting together and convening regularly around how to execute and how to do this, and how to address challenges that they were seeing, and what works, and what's promising. And that was very exciting and very, very fulfilling to be a part of.
Amazing. Oh, amazing. So that initiative ended at the end of 2024.
Yeah.
If you had one more year of that program, what pieces of data would you dig into further to take a look at perhaps pipeline data pieces or pipeline findings? Like, what are you focused on now as a result of that project?
Yeah, I think that when you look at something this big and this complex and this layered, it's so dynamic, it can feel really overwhelming. But what I learned from a lot of the employers was that their approach to finding out what was going on inside of their organization was very practical and very human. So there was an employer that looked to see who was being promoted and at what rate. And what that showed them was who was the least promoted in their organization. And they found that Black men in their organizations were the least promoted people. And you look at that number and say, why is this happening? So they went to talk to some Black men that work in the organization and said, well, this is what we see. What's been your experience? And after talking to several people, there were folks that said, look, I just don't think my manager knows that I'm interested in advancing. We don't spend a lot of time together. We don't hang out after work. You know, I'm not on the golf course with them. And so the human thing about that is it doesn't matter who we are. We tend to gravitate towards people who are like us, right? So first generation professionals. When I walk into a room full of first generation professionals as one myself, I know we have a shared experience. And there is something that we're going to be able to connect on and talk about immediately. Every single person does that, and it happens in the workplace. So if I am a manager as a Black woman, I know that if I see a young Black woman here, I'm going to zoom in on her and hyper focus on her experience. That's very human. There's nothing wrong with it. The challenge is that when there aren't enough managers of different ethnicities, races, backgrounds, there's no balance in that kind of focus, right? So if the majority of your managers are white people or white men, and they're focusing on white people and white men, then as a Black man or a Black woman, I'm not going to get that same attention. Is that intentional? It's not, but it is a thing that happens. So I think we were having conversations about the humanness of the way we convene and the way that we socialize, and what really happens to you when you grow up in a city that's segregated like Milwaukee. Milwaukee is just a segregated city. We all inherited this. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. No one's fault, right? So if you look at who comes over to dinner at your house, who you hang out with on the weekends, the majority of us don't hang out in very diverse, most of us don't have very diverse social networks, although we might have some diversity in our workplaces. That spills over into the way that we manage, the way that we promote, because we're spending more time with people who are more like us. Now, that came from a large company. And what I just described is a very human, there were some metrics behind the discovery of it, but metrics don't tell that story. That's a human story. That to me is what I would continue doing. Like the next wave of whatever our work looks like with the employers, that's the thing I would keep, is the humanness. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about inclusion, belonging, diversity, all the words that people are uncomfortable with, because they feel like there's an implied intention and that the separation of people is intentional, and that means there's something bad about you. And because that's the way we learn, history, there are horrible stories of that being the case. But inside of us every day walking around, that's not who most of us are. But we are reacting to our environment, and we are human, and what we're doing, all of us do. We just need to be attentive to it and know that there's a responsibility there when you're managing people who don't look like you. I'm having to be very intentional. The FUEL network is 80% white people. I have to be very intentional about the events. We go kayaking in the summer. As a 45-year-old Black woman, I'm not going kayaking. Ain't never been kayaking. Don't want to go kayaking. Wasn't raised doing it. Have no interest in doing it. I'm not going. Now I'm going to organize it. I'm going to make sure there's an amazing before and after party. I'll be at that. I'm going to make sure you have the best possible kayaks and the best possible route. I'm going to make sure all of that, because I care about you, FUEL members. I'm not going,
Right.
So, but I think that is an exercise as a minority person, a person of color, a person of the global majority, whatever you want to call us. We often operate in that way because we have to just because the sheer numbers require that we know how to operate around white folks. White folks sometimes don't build up that same muscle if they're not around a lot of people who aren't like them. So you got to learn it. Everybody's got to learn it. So that's what I love about this work. And when you get people in the room together talking about it, it's like we're just human people. We're just figuring it out. And there's something beautiful about recognizing that this stuff isn't always intentional. The exclusion isn't always intentional. And that's very exciting for me.
Amazing. No, I definitely agree. And I also want to mention your work with FUEL, because I think where FUEL comes in is that human aspect, that human connection. From a young professional lens, for a lot of us, as we are progressing into the early middle of our careers and whatnot, it is truly more about your network. It's about who you know, the conversations you're having, the candor with which you are having them, comfort levels, everything like that. So I definitely want to make sure we talk about right now your work with FUEL. FUEL Milwaukee being the full group title. You are the executive director of FUEL Milwaukee, and by the numbers, you are serving 40,000 regional professionals, 60 employer partners, and 7,000 registered members. Those are just the numbers as I have pulled them. They're probably more by now.
Yeah.
In that same On Milwaukee Black is Beautiful interview, you said of FUEL that FUEL helps Milwaukee professionals connect with the community through exposure, exactly what you've been talking about, to people, events, brands, accessible leadership, and a vibrant social scene. The goal is for people to really become part of Milwaukee's fabric and feel a part of the culture, even if they didn't grow up here. Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about your work specifically with FUEL, either in connection to your work with MMAC or FUEL as its own entity, and the impact that you have seen through those social connections, through that creation of the culture fabric of Milwaukee through the organization?
For sure. I think so. FUEL started in 2001. And when it started, it was called Young Professionals in Milwaukee. And it was one of many young professional organizations across the United States that was serving this army of mighty millennials that were coming into the workforce. The mighty millennials. So the largest generational cohort before since the baby boomers. So they're a force, and folks are retiring at such a rate that every employer, every city is really, really, really trying to attract the top young professionals. So you had to have a young professional group. So we did that in Milwaukee, but it wasn't for us so much about the talented people being young as it was about the innovation and creativity and energy and spirit they brought to Milwaukee. So the way that the organization was formed was that all of the events would be about helping people learn more about Milwaukee in a really fun way, connect to each other. So really authentic networking and exploring their city in a way that they would really take ownership, not just of what's already here, but have some kind of understanding and we wanted them to have an understanding, but also feel a responsibility to make changes where they saw changes needed to be made. So how do you become a citizen of Milwaukee? So that's what all the events were about in the beginning and to this day. In 2007, we rebranded to FUEL Milwaukee because there were a lot of people that were caught up on the words, like, what does young really mean? Do you feel young? Are you 50? Does that mean that you're not young? If you know, it just started to get messy. What does professional mean? There were like musicians and teachers that were like, well, I don't wear a suit and tie every day. Am I a professional? Okay, it doesn't. Let's get rid of the words. FUEL Milwaukee. What the talent does is actually fuel our economy. It fuels our work. That's where our name came from. So we continue to do this work. Access events where we would go into developments that were of high regional intrigue. Okay, the scaffolding is up. We got on our hard hats. We're going through with the developers. Because when you're 20 or 30 something, you have no idea, unless you're in that world, how does a development like this even happen? How is the couture here? How is the avenue here? Where did you come up with the idea for the 3rd Street Market Hall? And who funds this? And wait, how does this work? So you have this opportunity to talk to the people who are actually making these things happen in our city and learning the relationships that they have to have with legislators and the investors that they have to have. And well, what background do you have to have? So it's just this really exciting opportunity to learn how things happen. And you might keep your marketing director job at the company around the way, and you might never have any interest in becoming a developer. But because you know the story now of that development, every time you go there, there's a pride in the way that you tell others about it. Or I went to this FUEL event and we learned this. And that is you starting to be knitted into the Milwaukee community. It's you starting to feel like I am truly a Milwaukeean. I have an emotional connection to our story because I've been a part of the story and I've met the people, the architects of this amazing thing. So access events, networking events, volunteerism events, board placement, anything that you can think of is what we would really focus in on FUEL. Any topic. We've done these amazing bus tours, history tours with John Gerda, where he just gets us on a bus and he'll point to the driver, left, right, and just tell us about what he sees. Because we have these amazing people that have the ability to do that. And they have such deep and rich history inside them and share it with all of us. That's what FUEL is. So it has nothing to do with, like right now, today, it's just as much mid-career professionals as it is early career professionals. Back in the day, we were all 20 something. It's not like that anymore. It's very inclusive. We're exploring our city and learning together. So that's the spirit of FUEL. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, I know the FUEL events that I've gone to, I've left very energized, like meaningful connections. Yes, of course, it's networking, but also the topics of discussion and people who actually are attending the events because they want to, not because like their employer was like, you need to go to this and shake some hands and then you cannot wait to get out of them. Like it was actually very enjoyable. Everyone wanted to be there. And I'm hearing so many different purposes of the organization. If that group were to have a mission, it would be emotional connection to Milwaukee because you feel like you're part of the creation of the projects. For people who are perhaps in the middle of their careers and the networking and the knowledge is important to them in order to advance, you have the type of activities like those bus tours where the institutional historical knowledge is being shared. And then, I'm imagining how I would use that knowledge. I'm in a meeting, in an interview or in something like that. And I can be like, well, actually, based on what I've seen and the people in my network, X, Y, and Z is true for here. Here's how it can impact you. Here's how it impacts us. Here's potential collaboration, potential partnership and stuff like that. Like that is hard to find and it's hard to quantify in terms of dollar value. Because you can't always get that information from just like a presentation or a continuing education workshop or something.
Yeah, you got to be in the mix. Like you got to be in the middle of it. And I think so. You share all of this, the numbers about our subscribers. There was a time where you had to pay a membership fee to be a part of FUEL. Not anymore. Now, if you're following us anywhere on social media, if you're on our email list, there's no barrier. There's nothing stopping people from being a part of what we're doing, and you get to opt in. Maybe you just only want to go to networking events. Maybe you only are focused on volunteerism right now. Maybe you only want to come to an event where we're talking to CEOs because that's where you're minded. You get to kind of pick and choose the things that you want to do, but our goal is to touch as many Milwaukeeans as possible and sort of bring them into this energy, because otherwise you get in that cycle where you're just going to work and going home. And, that is very hard to break if you don't have someone to pull you out and give you a reason. Like, when's the last time, anyone listening, when's the last time you've been in Discovery World? You're not just going to get up and go to Discovery World. The average person won't. But if we're going there for a certain reason and say, hey, listen, a bunch of us are going to Discovery World. We're going to have an event. There's going to be networking and drink. Why don't you come and learn about this new exhibit or this new initiative or this new drive? Now, all of a sudden, you got something to plug into and you're back in the group. And that's what we have to make sure we always do, because everything at this stage is about relationships and it's about connections. And you have to be so practiced in doing it that it's authentic, where you don't feel, I got to go to this networking event, where it doesn't feel plastic. It doesn't feel plastic because you're excited about the thing that you're about to learn about and some of the people there. And this is actually going to be fun for you. So then you show up as your best possible professional self, in an after hours event. And that there's dividends that you get from that for years and years and years to come. You gotta stay connected to folks. You gotta be a joiner. You gotta be going to stuff.
No, absolutely. I am imagining, like, if somebody told me, hey, let's go to this Open Door Milwaukee event, but I guarantee you're going to find something that's going to help you in your professional career, I would be there every time.
That's right. 100%.
Love that. Love that. So for our young professional members who are interested in getting involved with FUEL, can you tell us a little bit about how they connect with you and what kind of, if they were going to get the most out of group membership, and I say member knowing that there's no barrier to entry.
Yep.
What would an ideal member look like? How are they interacting with the group? What does their preparedness to attend events look like? Tell us a little bit about what you're looking for a member of the group.
So if you go to our website, there's a couple of links on there where you can just join. The easiest way to do it is to join our newsletter, our mailing list. So in the summer, we do a lot of we're doing yacht cruises and we're outside, it's a lot of outside. Once it gets a little bit colder in the city, we're doing more of the education events and volunteerism, more topics, more learning events. In January, we do our professional development boot camp, which is a full week of programming just for your professional development. So there's 15 different workshops that you can pick and choose from. We do a mix of virtual and in person. You can decide if you want to learn, there'll be topics like how to run a meeting that doesn't put people to sleep or like how to survive dinner with your boss. That would be our spin on an etiquette course. And those are really fun because a lot of times it's a great restaurant, really good food. And then we'll learn the difference between how you handle yourself if you're having a meal in the United States or if you're dining with people from Europe or if you're going overseas. And there's just slight differences, little things that you need in your arsenal. And then it just helps you show up a little bit more confidently and in these professional environments, how to manage up, how to give effective feedback, how to be a manager that won't make people run out of the door, scream and quit the job. So that's all of the things that we deal with as professionals. A lot of us are given a lot of responsibility. Not all of us are getting the kind of coaching and training that we really need. So we provide that as an organization. As a member, you just plug in, so I think you sign up, you get an email, an event sounds interesting to you, and you just come with the expectation that you're going to learn something and you're going to meet somebody new. And if you're shy and introverted, we'll pick up on that and help you navigate the room. And, if you're outgoing and extroverted, you'll be just fine. Just start coming, just start coming to things. There's lots of people in the network, but you'll start to see people and you'll start to recognize. And then it does start to feel a little bit like, okay, this is family. It does feel like that over time. So you could be a little nervous. Just come anyway. Just come. You will not regret it. People are so nice. People are so welcoming. Milwaukee is just a great place to explore with Milwaukeeans.
I now want to transition ever so gently to you, Corry Joe, as a person and a representative of the Milwaukee community. You right now are a very public representation of MMAC and FUEL. How does being the face of two such well-known organizations tie into your sense of self?
It's such a good one because I think about the visibility piece so much because I did not know that would happen when I came to MMAC. When I interviewed at MMAC, I barely knew what MMAC was. I did my quick Google search and read the website to kind of understand what chamber world is. And, I came from my very first job. I was in a corporate environment. I worked at Manpower as a proposal writer back when the headquarters was in Glendale. So some people listening to this probably weren't even born then. They're like, the headquarters was in Glendale? Yes, it was. And I worked there right out of college. I was an intern and I got a job right out of college. And it's Manpower Group now, then it was just Manpower. And then I left there to write grant proposals for America's Black Holocaust Museum. And then I ended up being the director of the museum, and I stayed there for 2.5 years. And I learned that I was really interested in marketing. So as an English major, that kind of made sense. But when I was in school, first generation, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just kind of was like, I know I'm going to college. So I'll just figure it out along the way. And I did. I landed in the English department and loved it. In retrospect, I really think if I had known more about marketing and understood it more, I probably would have majored in marketing, because I'm like, that's my thing. I discovered it on the job. So I came to MMAC because they were looking for someone to do marketing for FUEL, this young professional group. And I thought, well, that's cool. That I'll be able to do some cool graphic stuff and some cool language. That's why I came. That's the only reason why I came. And when I discovered what FUEL was really about and started to attend some of the events, and it really had a huge impact on me as a native Milwaukeean. Like, my perception of Milwaukee completely changed. And I've been here my whole life. So I started to have this really intense belief in what we were doing. And all of our programs just meant something to me. A lot of it hit so close to home. And I remember thinking, man, if more people knew about this, they would have a much more positive experience in Milwaukee. So that just became my passion. I was like very passionate about talking about FUEL and what we were doing. And I was fortunate to come up in a very prominent organization at a time where young people's voices were sought out in a very unique way, because we were the mighty millennials. And it sort of put me on this platform that I wasn't looking for or wasn't thinking about. And to be honest, the reasons why I think about it now are because I don't want young professionals to think that you need that kind of visibility to achieve the things that you want to do in your career. And I think because now we have moved so much to this social media and influencer world, visibility is the thing. And when we were growing up, it wasn't so much, like in my 20s, I wasn't thinking about visibility. I was told, put your head down, work hard, and that's how you get noticed. And in many ways, that is still true. People are chasing, the 40 under 40 awards, and they're chasing women of distinction, and they're chasing. Nothing is wrong with those awards. I think many people benefit from having that platform. But I can tell you, it doesn't stop you if you don't get it. If you don't have a bunch of those kinds of awards. The thing that makes the difference, the biggest difference, is the relationships that you make. That is the only reason why anyone ever wants to talk to me about anything that we're doing, because I show up in a really authentic way, and everything that I'm doing is just from the heart. I wasn't making a bunch of money when I came here. I mean, it was for nothing else other than just the love of the work and the love of people, and that passion comes across, and it makes people say, well, let's talk to you a little bit more about the work. And I've seen that be the truth for every person that I've watched really achieve their dreams. It's all about relationships. It's all about being authentic. So it's one of these things where it's like I realize that there's a visibility, and I try as much as possible to ignore it. And I try as much as possible to leverage it for the good of whatever the initiative is that we're doing here. But I know that my bread and butter is my passion and my authenticity. Like, hey, I wake up every day and I think, if I show up in a real way, if I really contemplate and think about what we're doing, how to make the biggest impact, how to positively affect as many people as possible, and center people's experience. If I'm doing that, if I'm thinking with that spirit, And if I show up and just really be myself, and sometimes you have to fight to be yourself. You know, it's like, it's hard to show up in a room where you're the only person that looks the way that you look, and you're the only, I'm a little silly, or I'm going to crack a joke, and I'm, in a room full of very serious, stoic looking people who analyze numbers all day. It's like, if that is the way that people show up and that's valued, and then you show up in this different way, and your hair is different and the way that you dress is different, it sometimes is challenging to do that. But every day I give myself a pep talk every day to show up in an authentic way and be myself, and just let it happen. Let what's going to happen. And thankfully it has. Visibility is important, but it's not the most important thing. I definitely have benefited from it. Other people here have benefited from it, but it's not the thing that makes the biggest impact in our work or our careers.
Absolutely. I would completely agree. I also think that showing up as one's most authentic self not only takes practice, but once you get the hang of it, it's like a superpower.
Yep.
Like being in those rooms of, for me, like lawyers, not known for being the most ostentatious bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So I can come in there and make like those peers smile or crack a joke. Mm-hmm. Not only does that set me apart, as long as I'm being like professional, polished, strong in my word,
mm-hmm.
Clear in my craft, like as long as all those other I's are dotted, like that is what's going to make them like hire me. Like that's what's going to make them want to work with me, listen to my background and stories, and then ultimately my expertise builds trust, builds that charisma that you have to put forward, builds that trust and creates that connection. So I can definitely see how that leading with that authenticity, especially in the number of rooms that you're in with the demographics of people that you're in, I can see how that would be essential.
Yeah. I think most of us don't realize that we are interesting. Like as a person, you are interesting. Your perspective is different from everyone else's. Your experiences layer onto your perspective, and the way you interact with information and the way you interact with other people. And that is valuable in the room. I'm not always people's favorite person. There's people who don't like me, or there's people who don't like my personality, and I've heard it all. And you got to let that stuff roll off your back too, because for every 2 people who like you, you're going to find one who doesn't. And it's fine. You just got to let that happen. But I have learned that if I don't give my perspective, I'll tell this quick story about one of my very early meetings as a staffer with FUEL. We were in the staff meeting, and my predecessor was Shelly Drewitz. She was the founding director of FUEL. We were all sitting around at the table, and we were having a big event at Summerfest. So we would have this event at the Summerfest grounds like a month before Summerfest. And maybe we would bring out the director of marketing or the director of entertainment, and they would come and talk to us about like how they booked the bands and, how they became the largest, outdoor music festival in the world, and what was the process for all that, all of those kind of fun things. And we're on the stage, not in the seats. We're on the stage, and we can see the bathrooms. We're like, Bon Jovi used this bathroom, and like, so it's like that kind of, we're planning that kind of event. And we were sitting around the table, and they were trying to come up with like the food. So they're like, okay, let's look at the menu items. And they're like, oh, look, they have bacon wrapped almonds. Amazing. And I'm the only Black person there. So I'm just sitting there. I'm thinking, well, Jews don't eat bacon. Muslims don't eat bacon. Like I would avoid that because I know. So I'm like not saying anything. And then they're like, well, we got to have an opening act. We got to have some music before the event. And why don't we get like Pat McCarty? And they're all like, yeah, Pat McCarty's. And they start singing this song. And I'm like, who's Pat McCarty? what's on. And I'm thinking like, am I in the Twilight Zone? So we keep going, like we keep going, and they're talking about all the details of everything they're going to do. And there's so many things that they're saying that I'm so disconnected from. And I think before I even let myself think about what was coming out of my mouth, I said, you know, it ain't gonna be no Black people at this event, right? It just came out. And the director, Shelly, she looked at me, and it was like I saw this light bulb go off in her. Like, it just had never, what I said to her had never occurred to her. But it wouldn't. It would occur to me. That's why I was supposed to say it. You know? So I was a little like, I'm kind of glad that I just blurted it out, because if I had thought about it, and you think about how many times you've been in a meeting and you can see something that other people clearly are not seeing. What? Is it just me? And sometimes, yeah, it's just you. So, but you're representing other people who will see the thing that you see, and you have got to say it. Now, sometimes you have to find a nicer way to say it than I said it, because that probably wasn't the best way to say it. But I had a leader that was open to my perspective, and she leaned into what I had said. Well, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, look, everything about this event is white. And I'm not saying all white people know who Pat McCurdy is, but more y'all know who he is than Black folks do. And I'm not saying don't have him, but if you have him, you also got to have Black Elephant. And they're like, who's Black Elephant? I'm like, exactly. See, it works both ways. That's why we all need each other. So when we put the marketing out there, when you give the agenda, people are going to be able to see themselves in the selections. They see themselves in the choices. If we have a spread full of things that a person can't eat, they're not going to feel like they can come to these. This is not for me. I don't know who any of these artists are. This is not for me. And it's this subtle, unspoken messaging that we send folks through the things that we do. Well, how do people know? The other important thing about that story is when Shelly stopped to look at me when I said that, I saw her making a discovery in what I said. And I think subconsciously before that point, I think I thought it was always intentional when people are excluding people of color, because there are very obvious, like sometimes it is intentional. And I think we hear those stories so much. You see it on the media, this club and that club, no t-shirts. You know, there's things that they're intentionally doing to curate an audience that doesn't include you. And that is elevated so often that it makes us jaded. So that when that's not intentional, we see intentionality in it. And I knew at that moment, she's not doing this on purpose. It just never occurred to her, because I'm sitting here now, I can help her see something different. And she responded to what I said. And when Shelly moved on to she created a Fab Wisconsin for MAC. She moved on, and I took over FUEL. I kept all of those things in mind, that like I have to be thinking about our memberships. I have to be thinking about all of the members. I have to be thinking about all the employers. And when we put these events together, I want to make sure that when they look at it, they see themselves in it. So the panel is going to be diverse, and the topic is going to be diverse, and the places that we go to, and the food and the vendors we use, because I want you to feel like this is for you. And it just became this very authentic approach to inclusion that people responded to. The first FUEL event I went to, it was me, Michelle King, she's married now, I don't know her last name, she's a lawyer now, and Dante Houston were the three Black people in the room at the FUEL event. I remember that was almost 20 years ago, and I remember it, and everybody else is white. And I thought, man, no wonder white people love Milwaukee so much. Like, they get to do cool stuff like this. If there was stuff like that for us, and then I realized, well, this is for us. We just don't know it. And they just don't know how to say it so that we know. The last social that we had was the day that the night market was supposed to happen a couple weeks ago. Half the room, it was half and half white, half Black, just about. and that comes through that kind of intentionality. So I told that story and that long that long story to say, when you're in those situations and it's like that tricky, that weird feeling that comes out like, well, okay, nobody else is saying it. You are there to be the one that says it, because people can't see what you see. They're not you. Your experience, your point of view, all of that is gold. It matters. So when you show up in that way, it's like, make sure such and such is in the meeting, run that past such and such, because they can see the value that you bring.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And, nobody wants to go to that first type of event either anymore. Like I've been to plenty of those events.
Yep.
Like, okay, cool. Something on a stick and like a jazz band.
Yep.
Love that.
Yep.
Not what I want to do if I'm going to leave the house and be like, I can't wait to go to this event.
Yeah.
So, and I also think, kind of related to our next topic, which is like the idea of personal, like mission and personal passions and how that shows up in our respective work, especially centered around first generation professionals. I also want to draw a parallel between you asserting a very authentic, intentional opinion that led to a real meaningful change as authentic leadership. Taking then those principles and those considerations and translating them as a through line through your work moving forward. I do think that corresponds with, that's how you develop an authentic, inclusive leadership style,
right,
which obviously continues to show up in your work in the community.
That's right. It becomes a rule for you. This is the guide now. So every time I'm in a room, every time I'm listening to something, every time I'm developing something or evaluating someone else's development of a program, initiative, whatever, I'm looking at it through this lens. Now, this is a muscle that I have developed over time, and I just automatically show up this way. But you have to start somewhere. I was fortunate that, I was able to blurt this thing out and Shelly responded to it. Kudos to her leadership for allowing me to operate in that space. I remember Tim Sheehy, when he was our president, coming over to my desk and he was asking me some things about FUEL and things that I wanted to do. And I told him, I said, I just really feel like we can be the network that sends the message that Milwaukee is for everyone, and be very intentional about addressing segregation, what that feels like, how it happens, how it shows up, and prove that we all can be in the same space and enjoy things together. And I said, I hesitate to do some of these things because I don't want it to seem like, oh, FUEL has a Black person over there now she's trying to make everything Black, and like she's turning everything into the BET Awards, because that was the noise in the back of my head. And Tim stopped me and he said, if you feel this passionate about this, do it. He said, do it. Whatever ideas you have, whatever things that are keeping you up at night, I encourage you to do it. And when the pandemic hit and we had that Race Bridge series online, every week we're talking about, race, segregation, racism, and doing it in a way that's non-threatening, where people were enjoying the conversation, where people were learning. This is something that was in my head that I could have talked myself out of, because the network is mostly white folks and they're not going to want to hear about race and racism. And this is going to make them feel like I'm attacking them. And that's absolutely not what happened. It's the complete opposite. They were emailing me saying they want more topics and more conversations. And can you bring, it, and that authenticity, man, if you're not in a place career-wise where you have people around you, because some of us aren't as fortunate as I was, and there are people trying to suppress that thing in you, that's when it's time to move around. And you have to be in the space where who you are and your point of view is not being suppressed, because when you are freed to really operate in an authentic space, the things you create are completely different, and the impact is 10x what it would be. I sit back sometimes and I think, man, if I had dismissed the idea of race bridge, or if I had dismissed the idea of boot camp. There were people who told me don't do boot camp. No, ain't no one wants to come to a week of professional development stuff. They're not gonna choose to do that. That was the thinking at the time, that it was too serious, and people wanted to do things that were fun, and I just said no. I think the thinking was at the time the employers are already doing this for them, and I'm like, no, I don't think they're getting what we're going to offer. And I just pushed forward and did it anyway. And every session sold out the first time. I feel like when you do enough, you bet on yourself, right? You bet on yourself enough times and win, it builds confidence, but you have to start doing it. You can't stay afraid. And everything that I've done hasn't been a smash. I've made some put some events out there that just did not fly, that just did not work, but the majority of them do, and it really built my confidence, and that is my brand. So like in the community, that is my brand, that Corry cares about people. She puts together events that were, she's responding to what people think and how they feel. She's really authentic, down to earth, boom. And that's enough to qualify me for a lot of the things that I am doing. Nobody's asking me what my degree was, and nobody is asking for references about, you have to be you, and that is enough.
To direct us more into that line of thinking, I've heard you say so far, betting on yourself is how you develop confidence. Authentic leadership from a position of passion, turning that into good ideas, not being afraid to assert your ideas in the workplace, listening to multiple perspectives in order to come up with the best ideas and most meaningful, impactful work. What I would ask then, what other advice do you have for our first generation professionals, students, and young professionals, kind of as they begin our careers? Because the parallel here for me is that FGPM, our organization, MMAC, and FUEL, as well as you and I personally, have that passion for uplifting Milwaukee's first generation students and young professionals, making them feel like they're a fabric of the community through support, access to information and resources. What other advice then would you give to a first generation professional who's wanting to start their career in Milwaukee? They know nothing about Milwaukee. What would you tell them? What would your advice be to that person?
I would say be committed to excellence and be prepared. I don't try to wing things. Like at this stage in my career, there's some things that I can wing, because I'm in the middle of my career, right? I've been working for 20 years. So there's certain things that if I'm going to go on a panel about a topic, and I've talked about this for the last 20 years, it's not a lot of prep that I have to do. But in the beginning of my career, I'm not going into any meeting not having read all of the pre-meeting notes. I am going to know, even now, if I'm in a meeting with a person, going into a meeting, I don't know the person, I'll research the person. I know some things about them, so I know where I can anticipate where they're coming from, what their ideas are going to be, what their pain points are going to be, where I might be helpful to them. Spend so much time preparing yourself for every professional engagement with your colleagues, with people in the community, with your boss. Don't forget anything when you're going to the meeting. Don't leave anything to chance, because in the early days, you are also building the muscle for how you're going to process information and how you show up in front of other people. And if excellence is your standard, then that's the bar that you'll rise to. I was looking at, I was writing an event description. This was a while ago, and there was a younger colleague in my office, and we were going to a location that I had never been to before, and I needed to tell the story of why it was cool that we were going to this space. So I'm doing all this research. I'm on the website and I'm reading. So I'm sitting there with her, showing her what my process is. And she said to me, do you do this much research every time? And I'm thinking, you don't? But that was my lesson. That was the lesson that, okay, now I realize you're not doing this. Got it. Okay. What you see me doing, you need to be doing this. I do it every time. And it's your job, So I think sometimes we feel like there are some shortcuts that we can take, or it's really not that important, or, oh, it doesn't matter if I read the pre-read, they'll cover it when I get in the meeting. No, because there's things that you're going to see in that pre-read that are going to drive the way you engage in the meeting, and the things that you see might change the whole course of the meeting. Because guess what most people don't do? Read the pre-read, prepare. People don't do it. People don't want to do it. And a lot of people get away with not doing it, but they only get to a certain level. I interviewed Tim Sheehy before he retired after 30 plus years of being at MMAC, easily one of the most notable and powerful business leaders in Milwaukee. Had the opportunity to work with him for 17 years and interview him on his way out. And I asked him the same question you just asked me. What advice would you give to young professionals? And he said, follow through. He said the number of times that people do not follow through. He was the number of times that people will stop me and hem me up, talking to me about their ideas and their dreams and this ambition. And I'll say, well, the next step is, will you put that on paper, or will you do X, Y, Z, or will you make this phone call? And they say, yeah, no problem. And they never do it. That says something to me. Like, you have to do what you say you're going to do the work of following through, do the work of preparation. When you walk in that meeting, that engagement, that planning session, whatever it is, your goal needs to be, I want to know more about this than anybody in the room. And if you start with that as a standard, it becomes a muscle, and it might feel like, oh, why am I doing all this extra stuff now? But it won't continue to feel like, it will just be a part of your DNA, and it matters. People in the room will know, okay, this person knows their stuff. We can count on them. Ask them what they think. Ask them their opinion. And that's how you start to have the distinction in the business environment or whatever professional environments you're in, and you want to be known as somebody who knows their stuff. You don't want to be known as the person who doesn't open the email and read it. You don't want that.
No. And even for and that behooves you as well. Also, like when it's time for performance review time, that's going to take you from meets expectations to exceeds expectations.
That's right.
And then eventually it's going to take you to sets a new standard. And then all of a sudden you're promoted in record time because you took the time to read the pre-read. Because people do notice. I feel like a lot of time people don't do the pre-read, for example, to continue that example, because they don't think people will notice.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that was true, you know that you didn't read it.
That's right.
And that's on you. And that reflects on you. And we can only show up to others the best version of the selves that we hold ourselves to standard.
Because you can feel it. When you're in the meeting, you're like, I hope they don't
right. Yes.
You're not free.
Right.
You're not being yourself because you're not prepared. It's just, and it's the same thing in school, right? But it translates. I think once we get out of school, it's like, whew, but no, it's like that. You still have to continue to operate that way at work. Just raise the standard. That's what you said, right? Always be the person that's trying to raise the standard. I love that because it really does pay off.
1000%. Could not agree more. Corry Joe, thank you for being here with us today and sharing more about your incredible work in the Milwaukee community. I will close this out with one more question. In your 2022 Unity Award interview with Milwaukee Magazine, you said, it's not too late for any of us to shift our focus to greater equity and true community inclusion. I really pray for the day that we all feel that way about each other in Milwaukee. What a beautiful place that would be to live. Do you see that shift beginning to take root? And what are you most excited about for our community?
I do see it beginning to take root. I feel like there are so many people who have open hearts and minds and desire connection. I love it that, white professionals are like, I don't want to go to an event that's not diverse. Like, I don't want that. So it's driving behavior from leadership and elsewhere. Like, okay, look, everybody is calling for inclusion, and that's real, like, allyship and togetherness, and I feel it and see it every day. So amidst the world of a lot of negative stories, I have so many more positive stories about people who just have each other's back and just genuinely and authentically care about each other. I can't wait for the younger generation to come up and like kind of flex their muscles and take leadership and do their thing and be loud and proud and excellent and authentic, with their accents, with their clothing, with their hair, with their, like, I want to look at every other person and see something different. And I feel like that day is coming. I don't know when, but it feels like it's coming.
It's the hair for me.
It's the hair.
The hair is so cool. My hair is so boring. I love it so much. Oh, and especially like at work, and I work in advertising, so it's a little bit more creative friendly. Okay. Yeah. But my friends of color who have the opportunity to have cool hair every other month, and I'm just like, how did you do that? Like, how long did that take? Where did you go? Like, what was the thought process for this part? Like, how did you decide? Are you going on vacation? Is a question that like I've learned to ask.
Yes, because there's definitely braids. If you see a Black woman with braids, she's probably going on vacation or just came to vacation, especially if it's in the summer. If they normally don't wear braids, they're going on vacation.
Yes.
Like I get a kick out of when we start to learn these things about each other. Like when we start to pick up things in each other's culture and can call it out, and it just feels like where it's not performative or it's not like we're not doing it to be nasty towards each other, but it's just all love. You can feel the difference and the difference, and it's like, yes, when I have those moments, I'm like, yes, I'm supposed to feel this way. And one of my close friends is Eric Kennedy. He's Asian, so he'll be like, he's like, yeah, this is my sister from another mister. And it cracks me up every time he says that, but it's like, that's just him. That's just his personality. And like, we really are close like that. And I have so many, I could name so many different people where like we're learning about each other's language and like teaching each other things. And like, how do you cook this? And how do you make this? How do I wear this? So I'm coming to this wedding. Okay, I got to have traditional. How do I wrap this? And that, man, it's like, that's what it's all about. And I love it. And I can't wait till we have more and more and more and more and more.
Same. And when you're ready to tell those stories, I'm going to need you to write a book and I'm going to need a signed copy, quite honestly.
Well, thank you for saying that, because, it's like, who doesn't want to write a book now? Because we have all these little tidbits, but it's like, okay, what am I going to write about? But that's what it'll be about.
Absolutely. Corry Joe, thank you so much for your time. This is an incredible interview. So much information and thought into this interview. Thank you so much for your candor, for your intentionality, and for your work in the Milwaukee community. Where can people find you?
You can find me at fuelmilwaukee.org or mmac.org. And then all over social media, I use my government name, even my Reddit account, because I didn't know that you're supposed to not do that. If you Google my name or search it on any platform, it's there.
Amazing.
So add me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Okay, everyone who watches this, add Corry Joe on LinkedIn. She's an incredible woman, incredible Milwaukee leader, and we can all learn a lot from her experience in the community. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.